Hey, you're listening to Stop the Scroll, a social media marketing podcast, and I'm your host, Heidi Schmidt. I'm a social media strategist and agency owner with over 15 years of marketing experiences helping businesses grow online. We'll be diving into what you need to know so that you can show up confidently online without the overwhelm. Get your notebook ready to jot down some amazing marketing gems, and let's dive into it. Welcome back to another episode of Stop the Scroll. I am your host, Heidi Schmidt. I own a social media marketing agency. I am a social media strategist, and I work with small businesses who are overwhelmed with social media and marketing. And today, I want to kind of talk a little bit about social media metrics. And I feel like this is important because a lot of people get hung up on those vanity metrics, and we're going to talk about what those are. And then we're going to kind of talk about some top metrics that you should be tracking that are going to kind of give you a better snapshot of whether or not what you're doing is actually making a difference in your marketing. Social media is not your full marketing. It is a tactic within your overall marketing plan. It's a tactic in how you market your business. And that goes aligned with your email marketing, your content marketing, your advertising, any offline marketing that you're doing, events, et cetera, et cetera. Social media is just a piece of that. Let's remember that. If you're only marketing yourself on Instagram, you're setting yourself up for failure. So I'm going to talk a little bit about vanity metrics. We're going to start there because I feel like it's important, because I talk with other business owners who are like, I had a reel pop off and I got 40,000 views. Okay, that's great. Did you get some new followers? Did you get, if you're a retail shop, did you get sales from that post? What did it give you? Because it's all well and good. The next reel that you post could get 200 views. And so looking at those reels, views count don't really matter. Now, what those things do tell you is, hey, if we want to boost our reels views, what can we do a little bit differently? Think about it from a strategic point, okay, what can we learn from the fact that our average reels views was X? Look at it in a bigger picture rather than just individual posts. Oh, this post got 100 likes. Okay, that's great. But one post in the realm of things doesn't really matter. It just doesn't. So think about it from the perspective of what's your overall engagement rate. All of these vanity metrics, your followers, your individual post likes and all that stuff. Yes, they matter, but they matter within the context of your overall marketing goals and your overall social media metrics. Likes and reactions and saves and shares, that measures into your engagement rate, and that makes a bigger difference. That's something that you should be tracking. You should be tracking your engagement rate, because if you have a low engagement rate, it's going to tell you that your content's garbage and people don't value what you have to say. So you have to look at it from those different perspectives. So when we think about those vanity metrics, they're those things that they look really nice. They're really nice to talk about, but they don't necessarily correlate to your overall performance. It can be really nice if you have videos on Instagram or TikTok, those little confidence boosters, oh, they got 2,000 views, blah, blah, blah. That's great, but they're not really actionable, and they don't really give insight into how your overall marketing is performing. So how do we put all of these metrics into context, and how do we kind of know which metrics actually do matter? Because there are metrics that you want to be tracking, and I think it's important to kind of understand what those are. So for Facebook, for instance, you want to look at your engagement rate. When we think about engagement rate, and there are different calculators out there, I'm sure I can find one and share with you, but it's really the number of interactions on your post relative to your number of followers. Some social media platforms kind of say relative to the number of people that actually saw the post, in which case that might be an inflated engagement rate. I don't know. But for Facebook, you want to look at the engagement rate, and I believe you can find it through Business Manager. Don't quote me on that, because But you also want to track your click-through rates. Like how many posts are you putting out there with links and how much traffic are you actually getting? Always look at your Google Analytics to see what traffic is coming from social media. That goes across the board for any platform because you want to be driving traffic ultimately to your website. That's how people are going to convert. Yay? Yeah, yeah, yeah. So look at that conversion rate and Facebook ads. They really deep dive into this in terms of like your click-through rates, your cost per click, your conversion rate, all that kind of fun stuff. A solid benchmark industry average for Facebook as far as an engagement rate, because engagement kind of drives everything, is like 1 to 2% for those organic posts. It's higher for ads, obviously, but if you're just posting organically, like you can look for a 1 to 2% engagement rate. I tell all my clients, like anything above 2% is hashtag winning, which is a really low bar to set. But when you think about the number of users that are on Facebook and getting them to engage with every piece of content that they see, like people don't engage with every piece of content that they see. They just don't. This is also why I track reach. And, some people will say that reach is a vanity metric. However, I always want to know how many individual sets of eyeballs are actually getting on my content. Because one, we know that I think it's like roughly 5 to 10% of your audience is going to see any given post. If things are getting shared, then they're going to get more reach. So you want to see, hey, is my content getting shared? That's going to boost your reach, which hopefully will boost your followers. This is across the board, across every social media platform. So track it from that perspective, because also it's a good indicator of brand awareness. It's a good indicator that like, okay, more people are seeing my content month over month. Track it from that perspective. How do you improve those Facebook metrics? Compelling visuals. That's just across the board. Social media is visual, mostly videos, and make sure that you're consistent. Consistency breeds growth is what I say. So post consistently, like whether that's once a week, whether that's 5 times a week, whatever is your consistency, stick with that. And then obviously engage with your audience. That's always going to help improve all metrics across the board. So that's Facebook. Let's talk a little bit about Instagram. So the metrics that I say that matter, that I track for my clients, is I track followers because you want to see follower growth rate. Industry average is 1 to 2% per month. So looking at if you have 500 followers, a 1% to 2% is going to be like 5 to 10 new followers per month organically. Now, most of my clients get between 20 to 40 new followers a month. And don't even look, a lot of people will look and be like, oh, but I lost followers. My number stayed the same. Well, that's fine. We're going to do a whole other post about stop tracking the unfollows. Like, it's just triggering, like those are not your people. People that unfollow you, like you're not their people and they are not your people. Or yeah, they are not your people and you are not for them. And that's okay. You don't have to be for everyone. You shouldn't be marketing to everyone. So when we track follower growth and we track those followers, we want to see follower growth is brand awareness. And we're not tracking the unfollows. We're not even looking there. No, Instagram shows them to you, but you want to see a follower growth rate of about 1 to 2% per month. So look at how many new followers you're getting and make sure that it's well within that 1 to 2%. And that's an industry average. That's why we track followers, because we want to track that brand awareness. We want to track that brand growth. People that follow you show brand awareness. Obviously, Instagram engagement matters because engagement breeds new followers, it breeds extra reach, it just breeds all of the things that you want to see on Instagram. So tracking your engagement rate, especially likes, comments, saves, and shares relative to your followers, that, we look for a 1 to 3% engagement rate for organic posts. Now, we also need to be mindful, and let's just throw this out there, that engagement across most social media platforms, I'm looking at you, Meta, Facebook, Instagram, primarily, and also, Twitter. But does anyone still use Twitter? Some people. engagement overall, engagement and reach have been down like 30% year over year. And I forget where I saw that, but that's kind of a well-known thing. And all of the industry Facebook groups that I'm in, where, marketers kind of support one another, all the marketer communities, freelance marketing communities, that's what we've all kind of lamented about that, because it's really hard on social media to get any sort of reach these days. Like it's just hard. And that's why people hire an agency or a freelancer to do their social media, because it's fucking hard. I don't know if that's my first F-bomb on the podcast here. It might be. But we're just gonna throw it out there. Like, social media is freaking hard. So with Instagram, so you track your follower growth. That shows your brand awareness. We track engagement because that shows that our content is valuable to our audience. We track that through likes, comments, saves, shares, all relative to your followers. There are definitely plugins to Chrome, if you're into that tell your engagement rate. There are also calculators. So if you want to track that, I'm sure there's tools out there. If I can find a good one that I use, I forget the name of what I actually use that does tell me that, I will link it in the show notes. So, like I said, on Instagram, kind of a benchmark engagement rate, we look for between 1% to 3% for organic posts. Story views, because a lot of people post stories, and one of my content creators, and I'm going to link to her here, she posted a great reel that basically was like, and I don't do a lot of stories for my clients. I'll share like our posts, especially if it's like I want to link back to a blog, but I always tell my clients, like, stories are how you show up. Like, you should be active on stories. Like, that is you. I cannot be you. You should be active on stories at least once a day. And maybe not even once a day. Like, there are social media managers and experts out there that will say, like, if you're going to post a bunch of stories, you get better performance if you let those expire. So, like, post one day and then let those expire, and then post, that's 2 days later. So, like, I'm going to post a whole bunch of stories on Monday. They're all going to expire on Tuesday. And then I'm going to post new stories on Wednesday after they all expire. Because if you just keep adding on stories, people aren't going to click through all those stories. And I say this as someone with a friend of mine who just posts dozens of stories, and half of them are reshares, and I don't even click through them all, because I'm just like, at this point, I don't even care. Like, I don't care. So don't post too many stories, because that's another engagement indicator. If you're on stories, that is a really good indicator of how your followers are actually engaging with you. Like, you show up to your followers for stories. So ideally, like 5 to 10% is industry benchmark of story views. So look at your average story view and then kind of divide that by your number of followers, and hopefully you're closer to 10%. Moving on to LinkedIn. I do LinkedIn for a lot of my clients, and I'm really, really proud of the fact that most of my clients have a solid like 10 to 15% engagement rate on LinkedIn. I'm really freaking proud of that fact. So the metrics that we want to care about on LinkedIn are going to be your engagement rate, similar to Facebook, focusing on those interactions relative to the number of followers that you get. So your engagement rate, benchmark engagement rate is like, they say 2 to 3% for organic posts. I tend to think 2 to 6% for LinkedIn. So anything above 6% is like, yeehaw, winning. You want to track your click-through rate, especially for articles and posts with links. Ideally, aiming for like a 2 to 5% on high quality content. That's a good click-through rate. I personally don't track click-through rates very much with my clients, but again, I'm always looking at their Google Analytics. So I'm always seeing like, hey, what's the traffic that we're actually driving to your website from LinkedIn? That makes sense, right? Because Loomly, I don't know that Loomly tracks click-through rates. I use Loomly for my content calendars, for my analytics. That's my content management system for all my client content. I know that there are other platforms out there that do better, like Metricool, Cloud Campaign, that some other social media managers really tout. I've never used them, so I don't know, but I think Loomly does pretty decent analytics. Also, one thing that you can find in LinkedIn, and I also say this for Instagram also, track your profile views. you want to make sure, so like on LinkedIn, when we think about LinkedIn and how content gets shared. So I was just telling a client this the other day, I, Jimbo Bob follower, likes your post. It then gets shown to my feed. In an ideal world, a few of my followers and friends see that post from you, ABC company, and go click through your profile because they want to learn more. That's why profile views matter. So, similarly, on Instagram, we track profile views. That's a key indicator for me. I tell all my clients this because it shows that people want to learn more about you. It shows that they want to send you a DM or they want to go to your website or they want to click to follow you. Like, I always track profile views because it's one of those things that shares, okay, people are liking what they're seeing because they want to come and follow us, especially if you have a reel that like popped off with 400,000 views, you want to see those profile views should be up there because that would indicate that those people that saw your reel probably want to come and follow you. That's why we track profile views. So when we look at, and obviously there's so many metrics that small business owners, or, if you're a social media manager and you're trying to learn how to do your job better, there are definitely, I would say, the metrics that you want to track are those brand awareness metrics. So reach, impressions, growth in followers, those are your brand awareness metrics. Track those across the board. Don't look at the individual reach of an individual post. You want to see the trend going upward. If it's going downward, like, okay, what happened? Let's analyze, why was there a downward month? Was there an algorithm change? Was our content just not getting a lot of engagement? What's going on here that we need to shift to increase that reach, because that reach breeds that brand awareness. Track those engagement metrics, especially on Instagram now that they've said like that shares really are one of those key indicators to kind of get you more reach. So sharing is caring. And if you want to know how likely your content is to be seen, it's getting the reels that are shared. I was just talking with a client the other day and she was looking, what type of content often gets shared. And so I always encourage my clients, like if they see impactful content that they think is shareable, especially in their industry, like send it to me. I don't know what you think is shareable. I don't know what you think is super compelling in your industry. I know what I think is compelling and I know what I know is on brand, but sometimes without your insight, and I say this to anyone who might be working with a social media manager or outsourcing any of their marketing, knowing what is compelling to the client lets us inside your head. And when we do your strategy, oftentimes one of the questions that I ask my clients is like, hey, and the true story of your brand ABC, who would play brand ABC in the lifetime true story of brand ABC? That tells a lot about like the tone. It tells a lot about like your vision. It just kind of gets us into your head. Who do you envision your brand being if they were personified? I kind of went off on a tangent there. Sorry. So engagement metrics, we look at those shares, we look at saves, we look at another thing that you want to track is those mentions. Are people mentioning you? Are people resharing you, mentioning you on stories, all that kind of fun stuff? That just shows a little bit of like that. I want to say brand evangelism, but it's not quite brand evangelism, but it kind of helps measure like the clout in your brand. Like how are sentiment? That's the word. That's the word that I'm looking for. Brand sentiment. People that engage with your brand are more likely to convert. And however that is, whether that's likes, whether that's shares, whether that's mentions, whether that's saves, whatever that looks like, because different people engage with content in different ways. Obviously, like I share so many reels. Like that is my love language. If I share a cat meme or a cat reel, you know that we're like besties. So we know that people that engage with your content on social media are more likely to one, click through to your website. They're more likely to become a follower. They're just more likely to become a customer. So think about that. And obviously, we talked about this recently, relatable content. And I was telling my client this recently, how people relate to you and how they see themselves in you and how they think that you see them, understand them, that is what's going to build that brand. I don't want to say brand loyalty because it's not really loyalty when you're getting new customers, but it's what breeds that, like, oh my God, I need this, and that's what we all want as marketers or business owners. Like, you want people to be like, oh my God, I need to work with this person. They see me. So think about that relatable content and how you can use that relatable content to boost that engagement. When you boost engagement, that's what's going to boost your reach, your brand awareness, your conversions, all of the fun things that everybody wants, right? Right. So the ultimate goal of any marketing strategy is more sales. We all want more sales. We all want more leads. Like, how do we convert our followers on social media to be those visitors, to be those followers, all that fun stuff? How do you track that vis-a-vis social? So the big things, like I said, are profile views on Instagram and LinkedIn. Those are going to tell you that people, obviously, you want that to correlate, hopefully, with the growth in your followers, but also you can track that through Google Analytics. You can track your referral sources. I have a client who gets a lot of her leads from Facebook, specifically Facebook groups, and she does a lot of advertising. And so we've started looking to see, like, are you actually getting traffic from this advertising? Because we want to make sure that you are, because yeah, it's good for brand awareness, but we also want to know that they're actually driving traffic to your website. So looking at clicks on Facebook and LinkedIn, tracking those to your referral sources, using a URL tracker, I have it linked in the show notes. Google does tracking links that are really easy, free to make. You can use Bitly, anything like that, to use a tracking link so that you can actually see, like, hey, and I encourage you to use tracking links on every type of marketing that you do. Like, you're doing a trade show. Like, I had a client last year who went to a trade show. They brought a postcard to promote a webinar that they were doing. And I don't remember what the actual numbers were, but I was like, let's set up a Bitly QR code so that we can actually track how much traffic you guys get from the trade show. I don't remember the actual results, but they were like, oh, that's brilliant. Absolutely. Like, when you do things like that, like, use a URL tracker, because that helps you see the overall ROI of what you're doing. And same with email marketing. Like, make sure that you're using tracking URLs on your email marketing, all that kind of fun stuff. Because I know, especially with Apple, they don't always tell you what your referral source is. When you open up email on your phone, there's been like lots of privacy changes. And for a lot of email marketers, it's a big pain point. So, wrap things up. You want like a 2 to 6% engagement rate, industry average. You want to be tracking your profile views. You want to be tracking your reach. Stop caring about the vanity metrics. Stop caring about how many real views you get, video views you get on an individual post. Same with likes and shares on the individual posts. You want to track it overall because that shows a trend. It's easier to indicate, like, oh, this one, this post performed really well, but it didn't do anything. And, small business owners, y'all should be tracking the lifetime value. And these are overall marketing analytics. And as marketers, we drown in data. There's so much data. I think, like, a few years ago, way back when I was still an in-house marketer, team of one, I got to go to Inbound, and there was an amazing session that I went to. And I might have to go like find it and kind of like rehash it because it was so good. Like, I still remember it. I'm pretty sure I have my like Evernote notes, because that's how I take notes when I go to trade shows. Is how do you tell a story when you're drowning in data? How do you tell a brand story when everyone's like, what's the data? What's the ROI? What's this? What's our demographics? All of the things. Like, there's so much data out there for marketers. And as a small business owner, you don't need to care about all of the data. You don't need to care about that. Track the top level things. You want to see that, like, your brand awareness is growing. You want to make sure that your content's getting engaged with. And you want to make sure that you're actually driving traffic to your website. I'd say that more than the other two, like that is the most important. Like, are you actually getting traffic from your social media? Are your profile views on Instagram going up? Track those things, because if your overall marketing goal is sales/leads, which probably is, those conversion metrics, website visits, landing page completions, product purchases, discovery calls, all of those things, those are the metrics that are really moving the needle. Everything else is just kind of noise. And they're nice to have, but like they don't really matter. They matter to me because I'm a social media marketer and I wanted to make sure that, hey, what I'm doing is impactful. But for you, small business owner or solopreneur who probably doesn't have time to deep dive into the analytics, track your conversions, track your brand awareness, and track your engagement. Because engagement's going to tell you whether or not the content that you're putting out there is valuable. Brand awareness is obviously going to tell you how far and wide your audience is. And conversion is going to be the one that moves that marketing needle. That's what I say. That is all that I have for today. Be sure to leave a review, follow me on social media, and if you would like an audit of your social media platforms, including kind of a little analysis of your engagement rate, feel free to send me a message. I do audits, and they're like $150, so we can help make some recommendations for your social media if you are interested. Tune back in next week for another great episode of Stop the Scroll. And in the meantime, connect with me on social media. I love to hear if there is anything that you would like to learn more about and all of that fun stuff. Until next time.